Hey, let's talk about Kerberos now. So Kerberos is a very popular protocol for SSO, which is widely being accepted by the industry, and you will find this implemented almost uh, every organizations if like they're running their infrastructure on Microsoft Active Directory and those kind of solutions. So let's get into this and try to understand more in depth what do we mean by Kerberos? Basically, the name Kerberos is driven from a Greek mythology, which means a kind of three-headed dog which is guarding the underworld there. So, three-headed dogs means what analogy we have to think about is it is providing us with uh, authentication, authorization, and auditing. So, these are the three things which Kerberos can provide you, and that's why the name is very much kind of suiting its purpose at all, right? So it is heavily being used by all enterprise SSO services, and uh, the good feature about Kerberos is that password never ever travels onto the network, and because of that there is no chances of somebody eavesdropping the traffic and stealing your password. Another important feature which is there with Kerberos is it is making use of timestamps. So because of that timestamps, they it is also less susceptible to any kind of replay attack as well. Okay, let's try to understand it from a analogy here, right? So I'm just trying to set up a few things here so that you can understand what is actually happening in the background. So for example, you are already a member of a restaurant, and you are a permanent member of that, and then you go there more often for taking some services, food related services, just as you can see here, right? But there is a process which need to be followed. So as and when you need to go to the restaurant, you need to prove your identity to the authentication server, right? So for that there is a arrangement here, something called as this counter here, what you see on your screen. So that is where you need to get authenticated with this guy, which we can call it as authentication server, and then this guy actually sees your membership there if you are already an existing member, and he will try to validate your identity there, and if your identity is valid, then he will be asking this ticket counter guy to actually issue you with some kind of tickets. So when this ticket counter guy issues you with tickets and you are authenticated, so it is going to give you two type of ticket. One is for the admission, like to stay in the restaurant for another maybe like 2 hours or maybe 8 hours as per the their configuration, and it also issue you with some kind of ticket which you have to use going further to avail any services of the restaurant. Okay, so what you do, you get these two tickets, you take them with you, and you are going to sit here in the restaurant because you have all the authority now to be part of the restaurant, and a table is reserved for you. Then at some point of time you may feel going for some food, some services from the restaurant. So in that case you are not directly going to the service counter. Instead you have to again reach out to this guy who is there to kind of again check your ticket, and you will be showing this ticket at this point of time. Okay, and then again that particular ticket will be checked for if it is kind of a valid ticket, and then he will be asking this ticket granting service or kind of ticket counter guy to issue you with something called as a service ticket, right? And then you can take that service ticket and reach out to the respective counter and avail that service, right? I think this analogy you might have seen at many places. It's a very simple explanation of that. Now let's come back to the topic here and try to understand what I am trying to say you. Okay, so in this particular case you are the client, you are the system which actually need to access some services. Okay, it is just like when you go to your enterprise and switch on your laptop and then connect it with the wired or wireless connection, right? Then the first thing happens is your request is actually going to the authentication server, right? So these are all the services what you see on the left hand side. All these are the services, and then your laptop will get authenticated by a repository, something which is called as the KDC. So key distribution center is what we mean by KDC, and it has multiple components of it. Just like this is a authentication server, then it also has some inbuilt kind of database which will be holding all the credentials for all the systems, all the devices, all the like printers, services, business applications, everything. So it will hold all those credentials. And then we have a service which is called as ticket granting service. Okay, so this is the ticket granting service, and then view entire game happens on these two tickets. So one ticket is called as your session key. That is what you get when you get authenticated by your Active Directory in the morning. And then this service ticket, this session key may be valid for maybe another 8 hours, because you're working hour like as per your administrator configuration, right? So you will get this session key, and then you are member of that particular domain. You are online. Now, as and when you need some service, you need to use this ticket. Let's try to see practically how does it happen by some kind of diagram here. So you are the client, and then there is KDC. KDC is holding your authentication server, key store, and the TGS. This all can be on the same system, and in case this can also be on different systems, but conceptually it is all part of your KDC. Let's see what happens when you send a request. So once you connect your laptop, then you get authenticated with the Active Directory. What you do? So you are going to send your username, which is there in plain text. And along with that, for the validation purpose, you also kind of encrypt your username or some kind of string with your secret key, right? That means your password, and then send it across to the authentication server. Once it reaches to the authentication server, then authentication server is going to go back to this that database, right? It will pick up your username from that entire list maybe, and then it will pick up those hash values which are against your username. And then it will like kind of compare this encrypted one, it will decrypt with your username and try to compare these values. Once you are authenticated, that means you are eligible to be part of that particular domain, right? So in that case, your authentication server will reach out to the TGS, which will be issuing you with 2 tickets. One ticket is called as a session key, which is a kind of ticket which will allow you to stay in the environment connected for 8 hours maybe, right? Another ticket it also gives to you that is called as a TGT, right? Ticket granting ticket. So this particular ticket is what you have to use as and when you need some services, okay? And then that thing reaches out to your PC. Also one thing, when the KDC sends these 2 things to your system, it ensures that it is encrypted. The entire thing is encrypted by your password. And since it is encrypted by your password, then your system will be able to decrypt it, and then it will keep the session key for the ongoing maintenance of the session, and it will also take the key and keep it for any future use. So that is the step number 1, what happens when you actually go and connect your laptop to the enterprise environment. Let's see, if in case you need some kind of services, maybe like you want to use a printer which is connected with the domain, or you want to use any web services. So let's see what happens. In this particular case, if you need a web service from a separate business application, it is not that your system will directly reach out to the web service. Your system first will reach out to KDC again with a request. and it will also accompany your ticket which is already granted to you, that is the TGT. And then that request flows to the KDC. KDC will validate if this is the valid ticket. It will be easy for authentication server to validate because the ticket was generated by KDC by itself, right? And once that particular request is validated, the ticket granting service is going to generate one more service ticket for you. Okay, and this is how the service ticket looks like. And this service ticket is not encrypted by the password of the client. Rather than this service ticket is encrypted by the password of this web service instead. Okay, and then the ticket is passed on to you. Now your system does not have the key to open it, right? So it will just keep it as it is, and then it will send it across to the web application with a kind of request. And when this particular ticket reaches out to the web service, it will be able to decrypt it because it already has the password. And in some way, this is a kind of zero proof as well, wherein your web service will indirectly come to know that this is a valid ticket and this is coming from KDC. And with that authentication, the web server will open door for you to walk upon. And that is how you access a web service. Now, next time, if you need a printer to be used or any other service to be used, the same process will be followed. Every time you have to take this ticket, go back to the authentication server, get it validated, take the service ticket, come back and pass the service ticket on to the required service, and then you will avail those services. So this is I can say in a very high level way, this is how Kerberos actually works. Let's try to conclude this topic with some very important fact which you need to understand from the exam perspective. Currently, we are using the version 5 of Kerberos, that you must know, and then make sure that you understand this, that Kerberos only works on symmetric key, right? That is a secret key which is shared between the system or between a user and your Active Directory. Okay, and then it provides you with confidentiality and integrity for authentication, and it gives you end-to-end security because all the authentication packages, they are already encrypted. And please remember, password never ever travels in Kerberos, so it is able to provide you a protection against eavesdropping. Also, it makes use of timestamping, so any kind of replay attack is also kind of thwarted, right? So that is what are the good features of Kerberos. At the same time, we also need to understand some limitations when it comes to Kerberos. Okay, so there is one thing which is called as a single point of failure. For example, you have an Active Directory and you don't have a failover mechanism inbuilt, you don't have redundancy inbuilt, and that particular Active Directory goes down one fine day, right? So your entire infrastructure, since it is all dependent on your Active Directory, will go down. It will not be able to authenticate requests from different clients. Then one more important dependency is because we are using timestamping, and this timestamping has to match between the server and the client. So it is important that their clocks are synchronized, right? So that is also something very important to understand. If KDC database is compromised, for example, your Active Directory is compromised, then the entire thing is gone because the attacker has now have the complete key to the kingdom. That is where, because every credential is there. That is the reason why we should never be exposing our Active Directory. Maybe putting your Active Directory in a DMZ may be a very bad idea. Okay, and then in case if one of the client get compromised, one of the system get compromised, then somebody can use that particular credential to actually impersonate. So that's another challenge with this kind of setup. Okay, and finally, the KDC does not recognize a dictionary attack. That is a known thing which is there with Kerberos, right? So that is what is actually Kerberos.